What's up YouTube, this is Akimo from New TCG, and today I'm coming at you guys with a Baromagnes deck pro. Oh, I shouldn't actually show you that, but coming at you guys with a Baromagnes deck profile. So this is the deck profile that I use for BSFO standard in both EU and AO, in which in EU I dropped, and in AO I came 20th? 22nd, I think. 22nd, sorry. Yeah, so it's a bit of a different take on a Baromagnes this because there was a few like issues that Baromagnes has, of course, and which I tried to fix up. But yeah, so let's just get straight into it. First off with the ride deck and stuff like that. We'll talk about the ride deck first. This is actually the ride deck, so we've actually got the Bruce ride deck, right? And then into Baromagnes. And the reason why we do this, right, is because the reason why I was doing this because Baromagnes is very susceptible to early game rush. So because it's susceptible to early game rush, I wanted to make sure that I drew into something earlier on because then it gives you a bit more tempo during the game, and that actually helped a lot during the entire tournament. I thought that like being able to have that one extra card during your hand gave you much more options of what you could do to sort of respond to your opponent's grade 3 rush turn, which is really good as well. And I mean, also you can also make the case that you run more soul charging 2 cards in the deck, but that's really not much of an issue because either way, using this ride line, you -2 soul, but you draw one earlier, and I think that's something that's pretty good. You also actually don't lose out in hand because you actually like put one in hand and then you draw one with the grade 2. This one you just straight up draw a card, pretty much. So that's why I run this ride. That's why I run this ride line. There's no like final rush things or anything like that. It's just these three into Baromagnes. So I'm not sure if I have actually done this like in order, but anyway, let's go find the rest of the stuff. So next we've got three Baromagnes. For the grade 3 lineup, three Baromagnes. This is kind of obvious because like you want to run the more persona ride targets. Whenever you persona ride with Baromagnes, it's very difficult for either opponent to survive that turn or for them to actually come back. It also provides a way to get +1 soul, so that's kind of also why we were running it. But of course, it didn't really like a lot of the times you'd be soul charging your sort of Baromagnes into soul, and if that happens, then it's unfortunate, but you know it happens. Next, you run 4 of the Curtis. So 4 Curtis because on play Soul Charge 2 is incredibly good, and especially with this kind of deck that I built, that you need to Soul Charge as much as possible. So having the 4 Curtis with Soul Charging 2 was incredibly like important for the deck. The only issue I have with Curtis though is that if it's one of the best, it can be one of the, it's 13k, and if it's the only 13k in soul, you can call it out for 23 and 33 if you're on percent of ride turn. But the biggest problem with that is that if you call it your soul charge 2 and you end up getting closer to deck out, and that's kind of an issue that this deck has that I really don't want to like focus too much on, because getting to deck out is actually it can actually happen. So yeah, last thing for the grade 3 lineup, we run 1 Crawly Insects. So this card is just more of a win more kind of card. It's like, you don't actually have to like run it, but I think like having this card, it's sometimes your opponent could survive, but this card almost guarantees your opponent's not going to survive. And as well, you draw a card. So it's like, it's a refund, you're turning a 0 shield into something else. But yeah, there was a few times where I used this in guaranteed game, but other times it was just sort of like an extra card to soul charge. Onwards to the grade 2 lineup. Yeah, everybody knows that we run like Electro Spartan and stuff like that. So obviously, because the Spartan's not actually in the ride deck, we run 4 Electro Spartan. Electro Spartan, you don't have to worry about the first ability because like obviously it's not in the ride deck, so you're not actually going to put it in the Vanguard circle. You can actually, however, if you choose, like if you think that your opponent, if you're going first, right, and you think that, oh, maybe the ride deck's not going to be good, you can actually ride this from hand. There's a few options that you can actually go with this deck, which is pretty cool. Which is cool flexibility. I never did that. I just went straight into like Richard. But you mainly run it for rearguard skill. Once placed on rearguard, you can't +1, you soul charge 2. So it's good because it just fills up your soul very quickly. And that's pretty much it. I run 4 copies because you want to see a bunch of cards of Soul Charge 2. So at the moment we're running 12 cards to Soul Charge 2. And, you know, that's like 24 cards. That's 24 soul. But, you know, if you just find out, what the heck? Dogs, am I right? That's not my dog. Don't worry about it. Next, we run 4 Selfish Engraver. So this is like this this card is pretty strong in like most matchups when it provides the unhit pressure, especially if you're not at the 15 soul yet. Your opponent wants to keep guarding this attack because you know they don't want to get you to 15 soul. But once you're at 10 as well, it provides free counter charge and it's incredibly strong. I think this card is like one of the you can leave it like you can tuck it into the soul. So that's stuff like if you're facing up against Eugene, because they're already making a big deal about that. But if you're facing off against Eugene and stuff like that, you can tuck it back in the soul. Your Eugene doesn't have to retire or anything, but it's also not gonna get any power either way either. And against prison as well, like tuck it back into soul, your opponent can't prison anything, and it's a really hurtful card to them. But like it also has the added added bad thing that like if you put into the soul, you don't have an extra attacker for next turn, so you have to make sure that you have the pieces next turn to actually cool down and be able to swing into your opponent without sort of negging yourself out really hard. So we just on 4 of that, which is really good, and that's all for the grade 2s. You can make the case here on the resist grade 2, but she does pretty much the exact same thing, in my opinion. Next for the grade 1 lineup, we're of course running the Deep Sonica. Here we are. I really should have like ordered this deck before I did this, but like this is like spirit of the moment kind of thing. But so once placed on Vanguard Soul Charge 1, don't have to worry about that. But during your turn, if your soul has 10 or more cards, this unit gets plus 10,000 power. So like it was an 18k attacker, it could be 28k attacker. It's a really strong card, and yeah, having 4 of this meant that you'd be able to draw into it much quicker and stuff like that. Even though like in ride deck, it's almost guaranteed to easily get, but I digress. It doesn't really. You have to run 4 of it regardless of whether it's in the ride deck or not. So. Have to run 4 of that one. Next, of course, we run 4 of the Perfect Shield. The Perfect Shield is, like, it's very obvious why we run 4 of it, especially with the with their pricing and stuff like that. You might as well, right? You might as well. Next, we run 4 Brothers Soul. It's another card that's it's just Soul Charge 2. It's an order, so you're going to do it once per turn. So make sure like if you draw it into like multiple, you start activating them as quickly as possible, so that you want to get to, so you have to waste it, that you don't waste turns Soul Charging, or waste turns where you have 2 of these in hand, right? And you just don't do it. You have to make sure you do it. Otherwise, you could be like 1 turn later. But yeah, so Brothers Soul, pretty good card. Just on 4. And last but definitely not least for the grade 1 lineup, we're running 2 Gangnaram now. Okay, shout out to WCC Derek Dale for actually getting these two to me on time. Actually, shout out to WCC Kelvin too. But like we talked about that. Shout out to Derek Dale for getting me these on time, because I wasn't gonna play this. I was actually gonna play Prison originally if I didn't get these in time, but it came through and they showed up on Friday. So I was like, hell yeah, we can play this deck now. So we just do this because it's on play Soul Charge 1. That's literally it. That's literally it. So that's pretty much it for the grade 1s. Now for the grade, so the trigger lineup, of course, we're going to be going through with these triggers are like stuck up together. Crits, more crits, more crits, more crits, 8 crit. 8 crit because you want to be pressurizing. You want to be pushing your opponents to like high damage really quickly. So that's why you want more crits and stuff like that as well, because they 15k shields and best trigger in the game. Why the heck not? Yeah, because you want to be pushing your opponent really quickly to 5, so that Baromagnes puts that much pressure on their 15 soul. So that's really good. Also because criticals win games. Next we run 3 draw. Yeah, because draw triggers make you draw into like your pieces more, and you kind of need them. Front triggers aren't as good in this deck as I would think so, because of it's just like, for me, checking one of these in defensive is just really strong right now in this metagame. So when the front triggers get the 20k shield, you're replacing those obviously, but like this at the moment I think having 3 draws is really good because you can draw into your pieces easier. So yeah. Run the over trigger. The over trigger, of course, we're going to use the Dark States over trigger. The reason why we don't use the Crate Elemental is because this one you can check if you check earlier on. It's really strong, And Baromagnes benefits a lot from it because you can start if you check. Now check this. If you trigger check this earlier on with your Baromagnes, it becomes like a sort of damage deny kind of game. So you want to be put. So it ends up your opponents end up going into another lot of pressure and stuff like that. So 33k, it'd be like 33k every turn. You Persona Rise 43k, and that's really dangerous for the opponent. So especially with 3 damage stuff like that. So they can't. Then it means it's one attack that they have to null every turn, and there's only so many times they can null. So that's why you're on this one instead of the other one. Last one, 4 heals, because heal triggers pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Baromagnes. Yeah, so if you played against me, EU, I'm Patrick L. I think I should do the name thing now because a lot of people, a few people actually recognize me, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the deck profile. I think next was probably either Eugene deck profile, probably something that you've been waiting for a long time. Might do a Hex Orb deck profile later on. Might do a Bastion. So we're gonna aim to try and get a bunch of overdressed decks pumped out in the next few weeks before Festival Collection or just in time for Festival Collection. So keep an eye out for that. We post more Bastion and stuff like that, but we don't actually have our splits. A lot of us don't have our splits from our distributor yet. So these are the decks we've managed to build on. These are just 2 of the decks that I'm actually built on the fly. So yeah. So that's it for this video, and peace out.